They laughed at him every time he walked through those glass doors. To them, he was just the delivery guy, someone invisible, someone easy to mock. What they didn't know was that the man they dismissed had been building something far greater than any of them could imagine. And one day, the same people who smirked at him would be forced to look him in the eye as he handed them their termination papers. But how did a man they treated like nothing rise to own everything? Keep watching, because the truth will leave you stunned. Dorian Matthews had spent nearly 10 years delivering packages across downtown, slipping in and out of offices where no one cared to learn his name. To most people, he was just a uniform, a man with rough hands and tired eyes, blending into the background of their polished lives. He knew every shortcut, every loading dock, every receptionist who barely looked up as she signed for a delivery. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and Dorian took pride in doing it well. But at Whitmore and Klein, the sleek marketing firm with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows, things felt different. The glances lingered longer, the smirks cut deeper. To them, he wasn't just invisible, he was beneath them. What Dorian didn't know was that one casual delivery would ignite something inside him. A single moment that turned quiet humiliation into unstoppable determination. Because what happened next would change everything. And nobody in that building saw it coming. The first time it happened, Dorian told himself it was nothing. He had just dropped off a package on the 14th floor when 2 interns in pressed suits walked past him, laughing. He caught the tail end of it. Man like that could never afford to work here. And the way their eyes flicked toward him before snapping back to each other. He pretended not to hear. He'd learned long ago that ignoring was safer than responding. But it didn't stop there. Every week the whispers grew sharper. When he entered the lobby, conversations seemed to pause just long enough for the smirks to sting. One manager, a man with polished shoes and a permanent sneer, made it worse. "Hey," he'd say loud enough for the office to hear, "don't scuff the marble." That's expensive flooring laughter always followed. Dorian would force a polite nod, gripping the delivery cart tighter, pushing forward. Still, he kept showing up, because that's what he did. He showed up, rain or shine, packages on time, professional, reliable. But behind the uniform, behind the steady walk, anger started to build like a storm. Then came the breaking point. One afternoon, Dorian carried a heavy box into the main conference room, where a big client meeting was in progress. The receptionist had told him to leave it inside, quickly, quietly. But as he entered, the room fell silent. All eyes turned toward him. Not as if a delivery man had entered, but as if something dirty had been dragged into their pristine space. The senior partner, silver hair slicked back, didn't hide his disgust. "Really? During this meeting?" he snapped. "Next time, use the service entrance." His voice cut through the room like a blade. A few people chuckled. One woman whispered, "Figures." Dorian froze for a second, box still in his arms. His chest tightened, but he swallowed the words that rose in his throat. He set the package down carefully, eyes lowered, and walked out as the laughter followed him down the hall. That night, sitting in his small apartment, Dorian stared at his reflection in the window. He thought about every time he'd been laughed at, dismissed, or talked down to in that building. Every time he bit his tongue just to survive. He wasn't just delivering packages anymore. He was delivering his pride, piece by piece, to people who didn't deserve it. Something inside him shifted. He started reading. Late nights turned into research marathons. Business, real estate, finance. He saved every dollar, lived simply, and studied harder than anyone knew. By day, he pushed the delivery cart. By night, he pushed himself. The same marble floors he once walked across with his head down became his fuel. He told himself, "One day, I won't be walking past these people. I'll be walking over them." But here's the thing about storms. They don't announce when they're about to break. Months later, Whitmore and Klein hit a crisis. Their lease was up, and rumors swirled that a new owner had quietly bought the entire building. The staff whispered about higher rents, about the mysterious man behind the purchase. Nobody knew his name. Nobody imagined it could be the man they mocked almost daily. Until the morning Dorian walked back into that lobby, not with a delivery cart, but with keys. Because this time he wasn't there to drop something off. He was there to take everything back. And what happened next would leave every person in that building stunned, silent, and powerless. The boardroom was packed. Every executive, every manager, every polished suit that had once sneered at him now sat in silence. Dorian walked in, not with a uniform, not with a delivery cart, but with a folder in his hand, the deed to the very building they all worked in. At first, they didn't recognize him. The same man they'd laughed at, mocked, and dismissed as nothing more than a shadow in their hallways, now stood tall at the head of the table, their faces twisted from confusion to disbelief. One of the interns who had once joked about him stammered, "Wait, you?" Dorian's voice was steady, sharp. "Yes, me. The man you ignored, the man you laughed at, the man you thought didn't belong here." He opened the folder, laying the documents on the table with deliberate calm. "As of this morning, I own this building. Every floor, every office, including yours." The room erupted in gasps. Chairs creaked as people shifted uncomfortably. The senior partner, the same one who had told him to use the service entrance, went pale. His lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time, he had no power. Dorian let the silence stretch, heavy and suffocating. He looked around the room, locking eyes with each of them. "I carried your packages. I listened to your insults. I walked on your marble floors while you treated me like dirt. But what you didn't see was that every insult, every laugh, every dismissal was fuel. And now, I don't need your approval. I don't need your respect, because I own the ground you stand on." The weight of his words hit like a thunderclap. Some lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others clenched their jaws in anger, but none of them could deny the truth. They were at his mercy now. In that moment, the power shifted completely. The man they had tried to keep invisible had forced them to see him, to see every ounce of the strength, resilience, and dignity they had tried to strip away. And yet, the climax wasn't just about revenge. It was about something greater. Because as Dorian stood there, he realized this wasn't only his victory. It was every person's victory who had ever been told they didn't belong. Every voice silenced, every dream dismissed, every door slammed shut. His triumph was proof that no amount of racism, no amount of cruelty, could erase a man's worth. He closed the folder, his words echoing like a final verdict. "You will never laugh at me again." The room sat frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Because deep down, they knew the truth. This wasn't just about losing a building. It was about losing the world they thought they controlled. But what Dorian chose to do next would determine whether this was just payback or something far more powerful. When the papers were signed and the dust settled, Dorian had the power to fire every last one of them. And for a moment, the temptation burned hot inside him, to watch their faces crumble the way they had made his, to give back every ounce of humiliation they had poured on him. But as he stood in that boardroom, he realized something profound. Revenge might silence them for a day, but dignity, his dignity, would echo for a lifetime. So he didn't strip them of their jobs. He stripped them of their excuses. Dorian took ownership not just of the building, but of the narrative. He turned offices once filled with cruelty into places of opportunity, bringing in interns from communities like his, mentoring young people who had been told their dreams didn't matter. He became living proof that being underestimated was not the end, it was the beginning. But the scars didn't vanish. No success could erase the sting of being treated as less than human. No deed could undo the countless moments he had swallowed his pride just to survive. What his story revealed was not just his triumph, but the harsh truth, that in America, countless men and women walk through life carrying the same weight, enduring the same quiet battles, invisible until the moment they can no longer be ignored. Dorian's victory was personal, yes, but it was also a reminder that racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the smirk across a polished desk, sometimes it's in the silence of those who look away, and sometimes it's in the everyday dismissal of someone's worth. These wounds don't make the headlines, but they cut just as deep. His story forces us to ask, how many Dorians are still out there, carrying packages into buildings where no one learns their names? How many are being judged, dismissed, and broken down before they ever get a chance to rise? And when they do rise, why must they climb mountains twice as high just to prove what should have been obvious all along, that their humanity is not up for debate? So I'll leave you with this. What if the next Dorian never gets the chance to rise? What if the weight of racism crushes his dream before it ever begins? And more importantly, what will we do to make sure his story doesn't end in silence?